The morning sunlight poured through the hotel window, soft and golden, wrapping everything in that nervous kind of joy weddings bring. My makeup artist whispered, "You look like you've been waiting for this moment your whole life." I smiled, but inside, I was waiting for one face. My dad's. Every tick of the clock tightened the knot in my stomach. He promised he'd be there early, but his seat stayed empty. My husband kept glancing at me, worried, as guests began to whisper. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Dad's here." At my graduation, my chest went cold. My wedding, his daughter's wedding, and he chose her ceremony instead. I kept smiling through tears only I could feel burning. How do you smile when your father chooses someone else's milestone over yours? How do you stay proud when love suddenly feels like rejection? The ceremony ended like a dream half remembered. I smiled for photos. I laughed when everyone cheered, but every sound felt distant, like I was underwater. When people asked, "Where's your dad?" I said, "He couldn't make it." That lie tasted bitter. Later that night, when Daniel held my hand under the reception lights, I wondered if this was how love sometimes starts. Already cracked, already missing someone who should have been there. My father didn't call that night, not the next morning either. It was my mom who texted, "Your dad's proud of you." Proud? Of what? Standing alone in the most important moment of my life, I typed a long reply, then deleted it. Some silences are safer than words. 3 days later, a picture popped up online. My dad and Lily, arms around each other, holding her diploma. The caption said, "Proud father moment." I stared at it for a long time, not because I was jealous, because I realized he never even thought it was wrong. That photo broke something quiet inside me. Not rage, just resignation. Maybe I'd been holding on to a version of him that didn't exist anymore. That night, I sat on the balcony, dress folded beside me, wedding photos unopened. I thought about calling him, demanding an explanation. But what would that change? Sometimes silence says everything words can't. I whispered into the dark, "I hope she knows how lucky she is." Then I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just empty. And that emptiness would follow me for years. The first month of marriage should have been warm. Laughter, cooking together, late-night talks about dreams. Instead, every time the phone rang, my chest tightened. I thought maybe he'd call. Maybe he'd apologize. Daniel tried to distract me with weekend trips, new recipes, and gentle jokes. But love can't replace family. Every silence from my father felt louder than words. And sometimes I'd catch myself wondering, if he didn't come to my wedding, would he show up when I had a child? When Mom finally called, her voice was careful, like she was walking on glass. "Your dad feels awful," she said. I wanted to believe her. But if guilt was real, wouldn't he say it himself? "He's stubborn," she added. "He doesn't know how to admit he's wrong." I stayed silent. Some apologies, when delayed too long, lose their meaning, like wilted flowers brought to a grave. I saw Lily's post again. Her smiling face. Dad's arm around her shoulders. Captions about family first. My heart tightened. Family first. I wanted to type something cruel, something sharp enough to make them feel my pain, but I didn't. Instead, I just scrolled past. Resentment has a strange taste. Bitter at first, then dull, like you've been angry so long. You forget what forgiveness even feels like. At Christmas, Mom invited us over. "Your dad wants to see you," she said. I almost laughed. He wanted to see me now? After ignoring every call, every milestone? Daniel squeezed my hand and said softly, "Maybe it's time." But the thought of walking into that house, that same living room filled with memories of a man who used to call me his pride. It felt unbearable. I didn't go. I sent gifts instead, signed from us. Maybe I wanted him to feel what absence felt like. Weeks turned into months, months into years. Messages stopped. Birthdays passed. Sometimes I'd catch Mom's number flashing on my screen and just stare at it, debating whether to answer. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was just tired. Tired of loving people who made me feel replaceable. And somewhere, deep down, I realized I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I was waiting for the part of me that still cared to finally fade. 3 years passed like a slow storm. I built a career, moved into a new apartment, celebrated small victories. And yet, there was always that quiet emptiness. Daniel noticed it first. How I'd flinch when anyone mentioned family. How I'd pause at calls from my mom. I tried to convince myself it wasn't about him anymore. But every time I saw a father-daughter photo online, I felt a hollow ache, a reminder that the man I loved as a child had chosen someone else's milestones over mine. The world moved on. But my heart stayed in that empty chair. Daniel tried to fill the silence. Vacations, dinners, late-night conversations about our future. He wanted to believe I had healed. But healing is tricky. It doesn't erase memory. It just buries it beneath routines. Sometimes I'd see a father hugging his daughter on the street, and my chest would tighten. I realized the wound had become part of me, not raw anymore, but always there. A quiet echo of betrayal I couldn't shake. Lily called one night. "I miss you," she said softly. I wanted to tell her how hurt I was, how her graduation had shattered me. But I stayed silent. She didn't know how much pain a choice could cause, and I didn't want to ruin her joy. Yet, part of me burned with quiet resentment. How easily she had moved on while I carried this invisible weight. Some family bonds are like glass, beautiful, delicate, and easily shattered. The years had changed him too. My mother mentioned in passing that Dad had stopped golfing every weekend, that he sometimes stared at old photos and sighed. Guilt had a way of creeping in when life slowed down. But guilt alone doesn't repair what's broken. It can't undo the moments missed, the memories that can't be shared. And yet part of me wondered, could he even imagine what he had taken from me? Or was he still blind to the weight of his absence? Then the call came, unexpected, abrupt. "Emma, it's Dad. He's in the hospital." My heart skipped. I hadn't spoken to him in years. My hand hovered over the phone as fear and hesitation battled with obligation. 3 years of silence. And now, maybe a chance to confront everything. The anger, the hurt, the unanswered questions. Could one conversation bridge the chasm of time and betrayal? Or had too much distance already grown between us? The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. I walked in, heart hammering, and saw him lying there, frail, pale, a shadow of the man I remembered. He tried to smile, but it faltered immediately. "Emma," he whispered. That single word carried 3 years of absence, regret, and unspoken apologies. I froze, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. All the anger, all the hurt, rushed back like a tidal wave. Could I even face him? Could I hear the words I had waited so long to hear? Or would this be another wound? He reached out a trembling hand. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to grab it, to heal, to forgive. Part of me wanted to walk away and never return. The years of silence, of ignored milestones, weighed on me like chains. I shouldn't have, he murmured, voice weak. I was wrong. All of it. And for the first time in years, I saw vulnerability in him. A man stripped of pride, stripped of excuses, just raw human remorse. I sat beside him, heart pounding. Words failed me at first. The hospital monitor beeped quietly, a metronome of fragility. 3 years, I whispered. 3 years of waiting. His lips trembled. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd forgive me eventually. The honesty, though raw and flawed, hit harder than any apology could. I realized I had built walls, but he had carried guilt just as heavy. And perhaps it was time to let a crack appear. Then Lily arrived, her face pale, guilt written across her youthful features. I asked him to go to my graduation, she confessed, voice breaking. I froze. She had unknowingly set the choice that haunted me in motion. He hadn't chosen her over me deliberately. He had let her wishes guide him. The anger shifted, tangled with pity and confusion. Sometimes betrayal isn't malicious. Sometimes it's just the weight of selfish love, misplaced, miscalculated. We sat together in silence, 3 hearts tangled in years of regret, misunderstanding, and love unspoken. I realized forgiveness wasn't automatic. It was a journey, and yet, seeing him there, frail and human, I felt a strange lightness. The first flicker of possibility that one day perhaps I could let go. The hospital room felt smaller, softer, as if our shared presence began to shrink the gap years of silence had built. Maybe the real confrontation wasn't about anger. It was about facing our own limitations and admitting we all make mistakes that hurt the ones we love most. The hospital room smelled faintly of flowers and antiseptic, a quiet stage for confessions that had waited years. My father looked fragile, yet his eyes searched mine for understanding. Emma, he whispered. I thought you were strong enough to stand without me. I thought I was helping by letting you be independent. I felt the words like knives wrapped in silk. Strength, independence, they were excuses, fragile masks hiding guilt. And yet, I couldn't ignore the tremble in his voice. Love mixed with regret, clumsy, imperfect, painfully human. Could I hate someone for wanting to protect me in their own, misguided way? I wanted to ask why he hadn't simply come to my wedding. I wanted to hear the words that could make sense of the wound he left, but instead I listened as he confessed memories of my childhood. How he worried, how he struggled silently with his own failures, how he never knew how to say, I love you the right way. Pain isn't always visible, and love isn't always expressed perfectly. I began to see the man behind the mistakes, a father weighed down by years of silent guilt. Lily, standing awkwardly by the door, finally spoke. I never wanted this. I didn't know it would hurt you so much. Her voice cracked. I realized her tears mirrored my own hidden pain. She had been caught between love and ambition. Unaware she had caused a rift. I wanted to scream, to cry, to blame. But instead, I hugged her, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. Sometimes betrayal isn't about malice. Sometimes it's simply the wrong choices made out of love. For the first time in 3 years, I allowed words to slip. I was hurt, I said quietly. I felt invisible. My father nodded, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. I know, he whispered, and I will never stop regretting it. No excuses, no defenses, just honesty. And honesty, I realized, could sometimes be the first step toward forgiveness. In that fragile quiet, the walls between us began to crumble. Brick by brick, memory by memory, we sat together in silence afterward, letting words settle and memories breathe. I understood for the first time that forgiveness wouldn't erase the past. It wouldn't undo missed moments or stolen joy, but it could release the grip of bitterness. I didn't have to forget. I just had to choose peace. And as I watched him rest, frail but alive, I whispered to myself, maybe this is what love really is. Imperfect, messy, but willing to heal, one fragile moment at a time. After leaving the hospital that day, The quiet followed me home like a shadow. Forgiveness felt heavy, like carrying a fragile glass sculpture I wasn't sure I could hold. Daniel tried to comfort me, but I realized some wounds couldn't be soothed by words. They had to be faced alone. I replayed every memory, the empty chair, the messages never sent, the silent calls, and allowed myself to feel them fully. It was painful, yes, but necessary. Only by feeling the hurt could I hope to let it go. Weeks passed. I visited him more often, sitting quietly, holding his hand, sometimes speaking, sometimes letting silence carry the weight of words we couldn't say. Each visit chipped away at the wall I had built. I realized forgiveness wasn't about condoning the past. It was about freeing myself from it. Every small smile, every hesitant conversation, was a brick laid in the bridge back to him. Lily joined, sometimes nervously trying to bridge her own guilt. I saw how much she had suffered quietly, carrying responsibility she hadn't fully understood. One evening, she whispered, "I never wanted this pain." I held her hand, realizing forgiveness could expand to her too. That family isn't just about blood. It's about understanding, empathy, and choosing to heal together. Pain shared, after all, can be halved. And empathy, once offered, softens even the hardest hearts. He wrote me a letter, hands shaking, words spilling with emotion. He confessed everything. The guilt, the regrets, the fear of losing me before understanding how to show love. I read it quietly in my room, tears falling freely. Forgiveness isn't instant. It's a process, a choice made over and over. And yet, reading his words, I felt a flicker of release, a seed of healing taking root inside me. Maybe I could forgive him not because he deserved it, but because I needed to reclaim my own peace. By the time he left the hospital, I had learned that forgiveness is never linear. Some days, the hurt surged back. Some nights, memories whispered of betrayal. But slowly, I began to release the weight I had carried for years. I hugged him, feeling the frail weight of his body, and whispered, "I forgive you. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was real." And in that fragile truth, I discovered that healing isn't forgetting, it's choosing to love, despite the scars. A week later, I received a call I had been dreading. My father's condition had worsened. The hospital smelled the same, but this time felt heavier, sharper. I rushed in, heart hammering, and saw him lying weaker than before. He reached for my hand, voice barely above a whisper. "Emma, I don't know how many chances I'll get. Please forgive me." The raw honesty pierced me. 3 years of pain, silence, and missed moments came crashing together in that fragile plea. Could I truly forgive him, knowing how long it had taken to get here? I sat beside him for hours, holding his hand, letting silence speak where words fell short. The steady beep of the heart monitor became a rhythm of memory, of years lost and love withheld. I remembered the empty chair, the missed moments, the pain that had shadowed my life. Marshbar, your case. And yet sitting there, seeing the man behind the mistakes, I felt the first real flicker of release. The possibility that forgiveness could be more about me than him. Lily hovered nearby, tears quietly falling. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. I held her hand, feeling the weight of shared guilt and love. We didn't need words. The presence of family, fragile and imperfect, was enough. In that room, forgiveness was no longer theoretical. It was alive in the quiet touches, the unspoken empathy, and the simple act of choosing to be present. After he passed, I found a letter tucked into his belongings, edges worn, words trembling with emotion. "Emma," it began, "I am sorry for the pain I caused. I hope you can forgive me, not for me, but for yourself. I love you." I held the letter against my chest, tears streaming freely. His words, imperfect as they were a gift. A final bridge across the years of hurt. A chance to release the burden I had carried too long. I stood at his graveside in the soft drizzle of rain, letter in hand. The earth was heavy, the sky gray. But in my heart, a quiet light glimmered. "I forgive you," I whispered into the wind, tears mixing with the rain. Not for him, not for what he had done, but for myself. For the peace I had longed for all these years. I placed a candle beside the headstone, watching the flame flicker, small yet unyielding. Healing, I realized, is not forgetting the pain. It's choosing to carry love forward despite the scars.